227 years ago, with the most incredible document ever created in the whole world, the United States Constitution. The greatest document ever written as an experiment to see if people can be self-governed. Is it still revered? Does it still matter? Are we in a constitutional crisis? In 1775, the colonies began to revolt against the British. In 1776, we declared our independence and separated the colonies from Great Britain, and the Revolutionary War accelerated. General Washington's ragtag army of local farmers were untrained soldiers with turkey muskets against the most powerful army and navy in the whole world. In 1776, the British Navy had 96 naval vessels in and around New York City, Brooklyn, and Long Island. Washington had a few rowboats. However, Washington had a few extraordinary occurrences with the British Navy, such as winds and tides changing that disallowed the British Navy to overtake Washington's army, allowing them to escape. And Washington was once asked how he planned on winning this war against such a formidable army and navy. "I don't," he replied. "I plan to make them lose." And 5.5 years later, Lord Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown, bringing an end to the Revolutionary War in 1781. At that time, the United States was governed by the Articles of Confederation, which was a loosely knit document that provided a one-house Congress with one vote per state, and that was it. We didn't even have a court system to deal with disputes between states. The government had no power to tax, no revenue, and did not issue a currency. There's no money to assemble an army or build ships or engage in other activities essential to the nation's defense. We were very vulnerable at that time. States took matters into their own hands. Some even had their own naval forces and foreign policies. And catch this, private banks were issuing their own currency. Doing business with other states was very challenging. The 13 states were functioning like 13 independent countries. Obviously, things had to change if this new nation was to succeed. Alexander Hamilton and James Madison advocated a grand convention where delegates would meet to revise, debate, and expound upon the Articles of Confederation. 74 delegates were chosen by their states, and only 55 showed up. On May the 25th, 1787, the constitutional delegates met in Philadelphia's Independence Hall, along with Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and 51 additional delegates from 12 states. Rhode Island was not represented. And George Washington went on to become the president of this convention. Many of those attending were very skeptical and distrusting of one another. Every delegate, it seemed, arrived wanting something, and nobody wanted to sacrifice anything. More than a dozen delegates even quit and returned home before the convention even ended. The most debated topic was that of representation. How would the various states receive a voice in the new Congress? The Virginia plan proposed that representation in the legislature would be based on the population of each state. This plan was favored by the representatives from the most populous states, while the New Jersey plan was preferred by smaller states because each state had one vote in Congress, regardless of population. As you can well imagine, the Constitutional Convention was on the verge of ending in failure. The convention was now at an impasse. Subsequently, history was made when Roger Sherman of Connecticut proposed the Great Compromise by introducing two bodies, the House of Representatives would have proportional representation based on population, and the new Senate would consist of 2 senators from each state, regardless of your population. With that, the convention moved forward. The second most controversial topic was that of slavery. States with large slave populations wanted slaves included in their population, thus increasing their representation in the House. This idea was ill-received by states that had already abolished slavery and those planning to. This debate was settled by the 3/5 compromise, which allowed states to count slaves as 3/5 of a person for purposes of congressional representation. These delegates were high on ideas, ideals, and principles, and on what humanity could become. They agreed to compromise for the greater good of the nation. In the end, these delegates prioritized the welfare of their country over politics and personal advancement. John Adams and Benjamin Franklin said, "We're not doing this for us. We're doing this for humanity. If we succeed, humanity will benefit." Unlike other nations that were the outcome of wars or tribes that just joined together, this nation was consciously thought about, constructed, and scripted by visionaries. We the people, our Constitution is based on self-government. What an incredible risk. You're crazy, you're upset, you're destined to fail if you give people a choice. They must be ruled by a monarch. Most of us can't manage a diet, never mind a country. However, we were meant to govern ourselves through the creation of this new nation. We were meant to be free. Freedom was in the American soil. But the British didn't know that. And the French. They were so fascinated with us that we actually inspired the French Revolution. We created a system that said, vote for me and give me 4 years. And if I fail, you can vote me out. Unheard of at that time in world history. The framers were not infallible, but they did give us a blueprint for the protection of democratic freedoms, freedom of speech, assembly, and religion. But they also gave us the idea that a black person was 3/5 of a human being, and that women were not allowed to vote. Americans have debated the Constitution since the day it was signed. And as you know, there have been many debates during the last few decades as to what the Constitution means and does it still matter. So, are we in a constitutional crisis? The Constitution was born in a crisis. It was written in secret and in violation of the existing one. Today's debates represent conflict, not crisis. Conflict is at the core of our politics, and our Constitution is designed to manage it. The Constitution was not written in stone. Its purpose was to create a government that could unite, lead, and govern a new nation. It was written in the spirit of change, revolution, and turbulence. The framers, after all, were revolutionaries, huh? We are Americans by choice because we seek liberty and freedom, and if we don't continue to fight our liberty and freedom, we'll lose them. The Constitution does not protect our spirit of liberty. It's our spirit of liberty that protects the Constitution. This nation does not serve the Constitution. Rather, the Constitution serves our nation. Our Constitution is a living document. And we are the people that still maintain a more perfect union that may have been written in ink, but it is also etched in our hearts.